And joining us now to discuss the impact the Rustenburg strike will have on South Africa's economy is Andre Cilliers, Director and Client Relationship Manager at TreasuryOne. Andre, good morning. Lovely to have you at the desk. Let's talk about quantifying this loss to the economy. Do we have a handle on that number?
I think that's various numbers that we can get a handle on. I think what we can safely say is that the platinum sector represents approximately 2.5% of GDP. If you take then the loss of production over 4 months and you put that into figures, then you can easily say that the loss on production could shave off somewhere between 0.8 and 1% of the GDP growth of the economy in South Africa. Now that's dramatic impact. That's got the potential to actually push South Africa to a growth rate below 2%. And apart from that, it's got the potential to put us back into a recession.
I mean, that possibility of going below 2% was there anyway, given other things that have been going on in the economy. So this actually could make it worse. Mike Schuessler, the economist, said 1.4 million people could be affected now by this platinum strike. I mean, he sets out why he thinks that. Would you agree that that's the kind of impact, because the knock-on effect of these guys not working?
I think that could even almost be a conservative number, because there's a lot of industries that one would really think is not even closely related to the platinum sector. I've spoken to people that tells me that pharmacies is having a 40% reduction in turnover. Now, from the pharmacy, you go to the pharmaceutical rep with offices in Johannesburg. His sales are down. He's not making targets. He's not getting his performance bonuses. So he's affected, you know, and he's not even he's not even living in Rustenburg. If you start taking numbers of people on strike and you quantify that to the loss of income, then you get over a 4-month period close to an estimate of somewhere between 1.6 and 2 billion rands worth of income that was lost. Now that's money. The people that losing that money is not people that saves anything any month. They spend everything. That's loss of revenue for the retail industry. So they start suffering. There's a shaving off of jobs. There's people working less hours. So I think the conservative number of 1.4 million from Mike, as I say, is a conservative number.
But we've also got international spectators looking on as this strike continues, and in particular the international rating agencies. At what point do you think that we're going to see the strike begin to trigger some downgrades for South Africa?
Well, I think if one sort of can say that, let's look at the current account, for instance, and take that as a health monitor of South Africa. Now, with the loss of revenue, the impact on trade figures, the impact on current account, and the ability to fund ourselves, that health monitor is going to start looking really sick. And that will definitely impact on investors. So I think that's the really negative side to it for the South African economy, is that apart from just platinum, investors looks at us and say, do I want to put my money into a country like that?
Andre, I just happened to have this comment from Mike Schuessler, and I'll quote from elsewhere in his article. He says, South Africa is committing economic suicide, and this will have a negative impact for years to come, as investors will ask why government has allowed the strike to continue for so long. Now, we've also had executive pay in the news. Nozipo and I earlier were talking about the Chris Griffiths, and he's apologizing for saying, being insensitive, allegedly. And you look at that going on and you think, now, has management and government done enough to stop the strike?
I have to honestly say that I don't think so. I think way too much emphasis is on the right to strike and not the right to work. So I think we need to change the emphasis. I think we need to get to a point where we can say we can have wage negotiations while still working and producing. We do not have to strike, and we have to allow people the right to go to work. And I think if we allow people that right now and emphasize that right, I think a lot of people would turn back to the mines and actually be back into producing rather than sitting at home and improving the whole situation regarding this whole thing.
Well, on screen now we've got one of the graphs or one of the diagrams that you've produced, and in particular I want us to look at that quarter that looks at social problems, often very difficult to quantify the losses that we're making on the social front. But clearly it seems from what you've depicted there that there's a very big negative impact on the social fabric in this particular community because of the strike.
I've done a little bit of research, and the research was speaking to headmasters of schools, speaking to various people in that field, in the social field. If you look at the feeding schemes, you look at the breakdown in family values, you have people that no longer works in Rustenburg, but the family is behind in Rustenburg because they go elsewhere to seek employment and have an income. That's dramatic. The children going to school is pride that gets them not to say, I'm hungry. There's people sitting at schools simply, as I say, because of pride, hungry. Maybe not a warm bed, but the whole family structure is breaking down.
Andre, where's it going to end? Because we thought that after a month when they weren't paid, maybe 2 months, the pressure to go back to work would increase. We've seen rallies. We've seen them saying almost like the further it goes, the more desperate they become, and therefore the less likely they are to settle. How long can you see this going on, having done all the research you've done? And when it finally ends, how long is it going to take to recover the damage?
I think it's going to take many, many years to recover the damage. How long will it go on? That's a difficult one. I think we need involvement at a very high level of government. I think our president needs to get involved. I think, as I said earlier, the right to work needs to be emphasized.
But linked with that, of course, is you may well say they may say there's a right to work, but if you have intimidation, I mean, several people have been killed, well, in other words, can the government enforce it, is the question.
I think it can be enforced, yes. I think there can be an enforcement on that from government. I think there can be protection of workers going to work. And I think if you drag in the leaders of the union and actually have a talk to them as well, so that they can understand that this is a dramatic impact that will last for years, and rather have the people back at work and have a payback once the settlement is reached, a backdated payment, but at least let the people carry on working so that this does not impact further on the economy.
Andre, quickly, just before we let you go, I always believe that history can give us some insight into some of the problems that we face today. If we're to reflect back, what do you think is the real reason for the strike? Why have there been such a digging in of the heels on both sides that have led to a strike that's been the longest and the costliest in history?
This is going to be a little bit of a controversial one from my side, but I think we as human beings far too easily sit around dinner tables with crystal glasses and discuss poverty issues, whilst we at the top can actually also do something to really alleviate the poverty problem. And so too much discussion is being had about this without us really, really doing something. I think the time has come for the top end to also really show their solidarity with people in poverty and do something about it.